Today's lesson is a geometry lesson on triangles and Pythagorean theorem. So in this video, we are first going to determine how to find a missing angle measure of a triangle. So in doing that, one thing that you need to understand about triangles is that the sum of all three angles must total 180 degrees. So if you are given two angle measures, you can easily find the third by using addition and subtraction. So let's take a look at my first example. In this example, we have the measure of angle A equal to 40 degrees. And you can see that right here. I have the measure of angle B being equivalent to 80 degrees. My job is to find the missing angle measure, which is C, right here. So if I take and add up 40 and 80, I get 120 degrees. If I then take that 120 degrees and subtract it from 180, I can find the missing measure, which C then right here happens to be 60 degrees. All three must add to 180 degrees to be considered a triangle. Now, one thing I want to mention, when you are doing geometry problems, nothing is ever drawn to scale. So no matter if it looks to you like this is maybe 40 degrees, similar to this one, you have to actually follow the facts that are given. So the only thing we know is that this angle is 40 and this one is 80. The size and shape of the triangle really has no bearing on our calculations. So the missing measure is 60 degrees. So let's try some other problems that are very similar to this, only they may be worded a little bit differently. In example 2, it says find the missing measure in a triangle if one angle measures 30 and the other measures 60. Now if you want to, you can even draw yourself a picture to help you, and let's say one is 30, maybe this one is 60, and we're looking for this missing measure. So in doing that, again, you're simply just going to add up the two that are given. So 30 and 60 is 90 degrees. Then I'm going to take 180 and subtract that 90. Well, that is 90 degrees. Now it certainly doesn't look like the missing measure according to my picture is going to be a 90-degree angle. However, that's what I got. So that's the missing measure. Geometry pictures that you draw are not going to be to scale, so go with your calculations. Here's some more examples of doing the same thing, but it's worded a little differently. It says triangle ABC, M stands for measure, equals 35 for A, angle B is 25, and we have to find C. So while you're working right along with me, you're going to be adding the two given measures up, and I get 60 degrees. Then, of course, subtracting that 60 from 180 will give you 120 degrees. So that first problem is 120 degrees. And the second one, this is triangle DEF. So we have the measure of two of the angles. So I'm going to add 90 and 34. I get 124 degrees. If I subtract that from 180, got to borrow, I get a 6. This one is 56 degrees. In the last one, if I add those two together, I get 74 degrees. And then I'm going to subtract from 180, and I get 106. Okay. So those are some great examples of how to find a missing measure. Here's one more where we actually have a picture. So we have 23 degrees, 124, and a missing measure. So once again, you're just going to add two together. For this one, I get 147 degrees. If I subtract that from 180, it looks like I'm going to have 33 degrees as my missing measure. And one more before we go on to Pythagorean theorem. Our missing measure is down here. I have 2. If I go ahead and add those two up, 105 and 45, that's 150. Of course, 180 subtract 150 is just 30, so that missing measure is 30 degrees. Okay, you really needed all of this background information to be able to solve for missing measures using Pythagorean's theorem. So Pythagorean's theorem is used to find missing side lengths of right triangles only. So a right triangle has one right angle that's exactly equal to 90 degrees. It has what we call a hypotenuse, and that's always side C. It's also the longest side measure of our right triangle. The hypotenuse is always right across from that right angle as well. So it's really important that you know which side is equal to the C in Pythagorean's theorem. A and B, it doesn't really matter. They can be interchanged here for the side length. But what is important is that you always know where side C is, and it's always directly across from that right angle. So right down here I gave you the 3 pointers. A and B are called the legs of the right triangle, while C is the hypotenuse. It is also the longest leg of the triangle, and it's always opposite the 90-degree angle. The theorem itself is right here. A squared plus B squared is always equal to C squared. So we're going to take a look at two sample problems where we use Pythagorean's theorem. So here's our 2 right triangles, and we're going to use the theorem to find this missing side, which is labeled X. So if I go directly across from my 90-degree angle, I know that this side is also the hypotenuse. So this is going to be side C. 6 and 8 are the 2 measures. Now I could make this one equal to A and this one equal to B, or I can interchange these two. The only one that has to be C is the one that's directly across from the right angle. So if I write down Pythagorean's theorem, it's A squared plus B squared is always equal to C squared. So if I go ahead and replace my A value with a 6, because that's what it's equal to, 6 units, and the B with an 8, I'm going to set that equal to C squared. Now when you're solving or simplifying an exponent like 6 squared, this means to take 6 times itself 2 times. So 6 times 6, or 6 squared, is equal to 36. 8 squared, or 8 times 8, is equal to 64. All of that is going to be equal to our missing measure. So now I can go ahead and add these two up, and I get 36 plus 64 is equal to 100. But that is what C squared is. In other words, I need to figure out what number times itself is equal to 100. So in order to do that, I'm actually going to find the square root of both sides. When you find the square root of 100, you're looking for a number that times itself is equal to 100. If you're not sure, you can always use your calculator and find the square root of 100. If you happen to know that that number is 10, you are correct. When you find the square root of C squared, that's just C. So in other words, the square sign and the square root cancel each other out. So the answer to the first problem is 10. Now, since there's not a unit of measure here, if I were answering this on a test or a quiz, I would just add units to that word. So my final answer is 10 units. And a good way to check your answer is to make sure, since this is the hypotenuse, C, it had to be a number that's larger than 8 and a number that's larger than 6, because the hypotenuse is always the longest leg of our triangle. Let's try the next one. Identifying the hypotenuse would be the most important thing before you start. If I go directly across from my 90-degree angle, I see that that number is 13. So this is going to be my C value now, or my hypotenuse. That means one of the legs is missing. So I'm going to make the 12 equal to my A, and this is the missing side, so that's the missing measure I'm looking for. Okay, so let's set up our problem. Once again, it's going to be A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared. Since 12 is my A value, I'm going to replace that A with a 12. I'm looking for the B value, and the C value is going to be 13 squared. 12 times 12 is 144. Since I don't know what B is equal to, I'm going to leave that there. And 13 squared is 169. Now that we have what looks like an equation, some of you have worked on equations in the past. We want to get this B value by itself. So what we need to do is subtract 144 from the left side of our equation as well as the right side. When I do that, I do get my B squared by itself because 144 take away 144 is 0. On the other side, 169 take away 144 is 25. So now I'm looking for a number times itself that's equal to 25, or in other words, find the square root of both sides. And when you do that, you will discover that B is equal to 5. Now that missing measure had to be smaller than my hypotenuse, so it would make sense that B is equal to 5. Okay, thank you for watching my video, and I hope this helps.